Alright, so we're going to take a look at my metabolic test and some of the results, some of the graphs that Jonathan, the trainer, sent to me so that you guys can see a little bit better what actually went down inside of my body while I was going through this test. How's it going, runners? My name is Justin Thompson. I'm your average running PT, and I help the average runner achieve their own personal elite status. If that's something you guys are into, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button and click the bell so you know when the next video comes out. Alright, so we're going to go into my computer and we're going to break down some of these graphs. So I've got my computer here right now, and I'm just going to start pulling things up because I want to show you guys a little bit of what actually happened metabolically. What were the physiologic processes that were going on in my body as I was going through this max effort test, right? So I'm going to go ahead and open things up on my computer so that you guys can start to see what these graphs are, and I'm going to try and do my best to kind of walk you guys through them. Now, I don't have the full write-up, the full report necessarily, but I do have these graphs and I can kind of break things down a little bit because John also sent me a detailed email about kind of what all of it means, so I can kind of break it down a little bit for you guys here today, and that way you can see what are all the different pieces of data that you can get from a test like this, and then you could decide, you know, if it's something that you want to potentially spend a little bit of money to go and do. I was lucky. The test was free for me, so I didn't have to spend anything. That's the only reason I got to do it. So I know that typically these are very, very expensive. So I'm not pushing you in one way or another. I'm just saying, let's see what the numbers show, and then if it's something that you want to explore and do, then it'll give you a look into what you could find about yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and open up some of these graphs here. And the first one we see, this is, it's got three different things on it. It's got your heart rate, it's got your breathing frequency, and then your ventilation. So on this particular graph, the first thing you're going to notice is at the end of the test, and I'll show you guys here, at the end of the test, right in here, this is where my heart rate monitor started going crazy. And if you guys didn't watch the test in action, you'll see I explained that, you know, the heart rate monitor it was a mess at the very end, and this is what the result was on the test. So unfortunately, I didn't catch the last, maybe 25-30 seconds of this test because of the heart rate monitor sliding around on me. So very unfortunate, but what did we figure out though? Basically, my heart rate got up to around 191 before it started going crazy. Again, I had another 25-30 seconds, and I probably had another 30 seconds in me beyond that, but because I was trying to adjust and hold this thing on, it zapped my energy and I was done. So I unfortunately did not get the best reading for maximum heart rate. My guess is that my max heart rate was probably around 195 if I were to have continued to push it that extra 30 seconds. So it eventually measured 191 before it started going crazy. So I'm guessing it was somewhere in the 191 to 195 range. Okay, so and then breaths per minute, as you would expect, as the intensity got harder, my breathing started to get a little bit more rapid. It was pretty comfortable throughout this whole section here, and I'll show you what this section is on a different graph. I was very comfortable right there. I'll show you that, this section right here is probably going to represent my zone 2. Okay, my zone 2. So, and then the intensity starts to increase and my breathing starts to increase, gets harder, gets harder, gets harder until eventually I'm done. And then ventilation, this is how much oxygen are you exchanging, and this is liters per minute. It's not broken down into a VO2 max score, which is usually broken down into milliliters per minute per kilogram of body weight. What this shows is, your increase, it's increasing throughout the entire test until the very end, and I stop. And so those are those 3 lines on this graph. So if we move on to the next one, let's see what the next one is. Okay, so this is titled Fat Carb Crossover. So what this is going to show me is how efficiently am I using fat for fuel. And what you'll see is, down in here, right here, very comfortable. This is where I'm walking or very slow jogging to start. And then right in here, this is where I started to bump up into my zone 2. This is kind of the spike up where I start to utilize a significantly greater amount of fat for fuel, and that's around 142 beats per minute. So that's the beginning of my zone 2. All right, and then it kind of stays this way until there's a crossover right over here. I'm going to show you in a second on a different graph where that is exactly, but this is the beginning of my zone 2 right here at 142 beats per minute, where I am starting to utilize a significantly greater amount of fat for fuel than carbs. So this right here, this gap that you see between these lines, this is a good sign that I am burning fat for fuel, and which is, I've been training using MAF training for the last 3 or 4 months, and so the goal of that has been to try and improve my aerobic fitness, my aerobic endurance, and burn fat for fuel better. So this right here is a really good sign. Alright, so I'll move on to the next graph here. Alright, so this one says it's unnamed. I forget what this is for. It's showing the same numbers that we saw a little while ago, but he's also putting a mark right here at 174. And oh, I know what this is. So this is, you can see on the ventilation line, this blue line right here in the middle, and also in the breaths as well. You can see that as we get here, there's a sudden uptick in ventilation. There's a sudden uptick in breaths per minute, right? So right here at this line, this is that zone 3 to zone 4 threshold. Okay, this is where it starts to get harder. This is where lactate starts to build. This is where things are starting to change significantly from a lot less aerobic to a lot more anaerobic. Okay, so this is the beginning of my zone 4. Okay, 174 beats per minute is where you see the sudden bump uptick in that direction as far as ventilation goes. Okay, and then then here I gotta be reminded what this is. VO2. Alright, let me go back to the email. VO2BF. This shows your oxygen consumption combined with your breathing frequency. We want to see a peak late in the test. The later the better, as it's only a matter of time until the intensity catches up with you. Just can't keep up with the demand. We see a bit of an earlier peak than he would like to see, but it does prove recent training protocols working. Because I told him that I was doing a lot of just aerobic type of training. So he wants to see a peak a little bit earlier or a little bit later in the test. So the peak is kind of back in here, which is corresponding most likely with my zone 3. So I think he wanted to see it a little bit later, but then there's a pretty significant drop. Or no, that's the end of the test. But then it kind of starts to drop down when I hit my zone 4 and 5. So again, I'm not 100% sure what this one tells me, but all I know is that peak was apparently a little earlier than it should be if I was in better condition. All right, this is kind of a faint line. VO2, heart rate. So let me look at the email again. So that's this one here. Check out the screenshot VO2 heart rate. It is important to be sure your heart is functioning appropriately due to the demand. That graph shows oxygen consumption combined with your heart rate. It should either show flat or trend upward throughout the assessment. We see an upward trend here, which is excellent. Okay, so all we know is that we should see an upward trend. We do throughout the entire test. And so, yeah, that's all I got. So I'll move on from that one. Okay, so let's look at zone 2 again. So I already showed this once, but this line right here represents the beginning of zone 2. Okay, so 142 beats per minute, where you kind of hit that top of that uptick here for your zone 2. All right, and then if I go to the next slide, it's going to show the top end of my zone 2, and he draws a line right in here, which is where you can see the fat burning line. So fat here is the dark green line. Carbohydrate consumption is the blue line. So from here to here, this is your crossover right here, and that's where he's drawing the line at 167 beats per minute. So you can see the heart rate trending upward. 167 beats per minute, that's where the crossover occurs. So it's probably back at around 165 beats per minute, where I was still somewhat comfortable with fat burning as my fuel source. So I would say, instead of pushing up to 167, if I'm going to work in zone 2 a little bit more, I'm going to work probably in the 160 to 165 range as the top end of my zone 2. Okay, so that's really good information for me to have, because any other zone 2 calculations that I've done have placed me significantly lower than that. So this is good news that I can kind of push a little bit more, maybe a little bit faster, and still be in a fat burning zone. And I actually did this morning during my run. I ran an hour and 15 minutes. Ended up running anywhere between my MAF range and up to 165, and I felt comfortable the whole time. So I was really happy with that. I didn't feel like my breathing was ever really labored. I got a little bit tired towards the end just because of the duration and because of I'm just not used to running at that speed. I've been running so much slower lately. But I felt good the entire time. So it just tells me that this is most likely pretty accurate. So I'm gonna put 165 as kind of the top of my zone 2. Really good information to have. Alright, and then here he draws another line right over here at 185 beats per minute. That is transitioning from zone 4 to zone 5. So that's the bottom of my zone 5. And then, like I said earlier, it ticks up to somewhere around 191. So 185 to 191, maybe 195, somewhere in there. That's my zone 5. Okay, so if I ever wanted to do that, I mean, as a runner, I probably won't tick up into that very often, but that's what that means. At least not until I hit, max effort in a race, right? So unless you're in your final sprint, you've been working really hard the whole race, and you're in your final sprint, and then that's when I'll get up into zone 5. But so there's the test, guys, and there's a lot of information here. And what am I gonna use the most, right? This is great information. There's a lot of stuff here, but what I'm going to use the most is this number right here, 142 to 167 or 165. Okay, so 142 to 165, that's my zone 2. that's where I want to spend a lot of my easy days and a lot of my long runs and all of that stuff. I want my training to be in that zone. I've been using MAF training for 3-4 months, and it has gotten me here. And it's, as you can see, it's been very effective at helping me to burn fat for fuel. And so, but now I have the numbers, I have the data that shows that I can push just a little bit more and still be within an aerobic heart rate zone. So I'm really excited to now feel like I can push the pace just a little bit and not be so reliant on, gosh, I gotta run 9.5 minutes or 10 minutes a mile to stay under my MAF number. Now I can go out and I can run, sub 9, 8:45. I ran a couple of sub 8:30 miles today, staying under, staying in 160 to 165. So it's encouraging. Now I do have to be aware of what that extra effort could do to my body. So I need to make sure that I don't overdo things for sure, because I have a tendency to do that, and still take some of those recovery days to go easy, right? And definitely drop it back into MAF range or even below. So I would say, if zone 2 is 142, and between 142 and 146, I might spend a lot more time in zone 1 and just do 140 beats per minute and stick around there for my easy recovery days. Okay, so you don't have to spend every day in zone 2. But this was super enlightening to me, this test, and I'm really excited to have these numbers. Now I'm also going to get to do the test again in about 6 weeks. So now I'm going to use these numbers and start pushing a little bit up into that 160 to 165 range for my heart rate, and see if I can even extend that zone 2 a little bit further. Now I'm also going to be incorporating a little bit more of the speed workouts and things like that, because I want to do a time trial, a 5K time trial on October 31st. So right now it is September 23rd, so I've got about a month and a week before that. So I'm starting to incorporate a little bit more of that speed now. So, but that's it, guys. That's the PNOE assessment. That is my numbers, and I'm looking forward to seeing what that gives me going forward, and see if using this data is going to be helpful or beneficial for me in setting training parameters and things of that sort. So anyway, that's all I've got for today, guys. So head on out there, seek your elite. God bless, and I'll see you next time.